All right, our fourth inductee is Mr. Joe Riddle. Joe is being introduced by Steve Cohen, the news director at KUSI. With the exception of a year-long sabbatical, Steve has been KUSI's news director since 2003. He has also been news director at CBS O&O stations in Boston, New York, and Los Angeles. He was the general manager at the CBS O&O in Philadelphia. He is also the founder of Court TV. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Cohen.
When your introduction is longer than the time allotted, you know you're in trouble. I am here today to talk about what we used to call people behind the scenes, the unsung heroes, if you will. As you can tell from my brief resume, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people as executive producers and producers. Some of them wound up presidents of CBS News, others heads of divisions. But I have to tell you, I've never worked with anybody who is as skilled, wholesome a person with a certain degree of humility and a great sense of humor as Joe Riddle. And I want to tell you why. And these are just a few qualities off the top of my head. He's steadfast. So it's 2003. I've just called the fire department, and I've said to them, the fire is right near us in Terrasana. I can see the flames coming towards the station. And they said, Mr. Cohen, sorry, but we don't have any fire trucks left. You're on your own. So I call Fred Swift. Fred Swift and his guys go on the roof with the hoses and start wetting down the building, literally. And Joe has just arrived to command the coverage of the fire. I walk him outside because we just want to talk. And it's like Pompeii, right? I mean, you know, you see flakes of stuff coming down on top of us. And he looks at me and he says, well, boss, this doesn't look too tough. I said, okay. So he takes out a cigarette. You can't make this stuff up. He takes out a cigarette. He smokes it and says, as soon as this is done, I'll go back. I'll go in the control room and I'll be good. If that's not steadfast, what is? But hold it, it goes further. It goes on further. So he's got a little PA next to him in the booth who's running. You know, it wasn't a day of a lot of prompter, but somebody had to run prompter. A PA is sitting next to him. The PA is scared to death because the fire's all around us. You can smell the smoke everywhere. Riddle is there at the booth, executive producing all the coverage, and the kid says to him, Joe, I'm really worried. I mean, that fire's going to come. When do we get out of here? He said, Joey, we don't get out of here until the fire hits to the pants of your leg. That kid was not steadfast. He left the building. He never came back. Joe Riddle is also very consistent. I mean, you have to be consistent to oversee a 10 o'clock newscast for as many years as he has. It's over a decade and a half. We've had a #1 rated evening news at KUSI, and it is largely the responsibility of Joe Riddle to make that work. He's incredibly consistent. The shows are the same every single night, the same level of quality, and he rarely misses. He also does all of our specials, so when I come up with some great idea, like I did this year, I said, here's an idea. Let's take all of the props and all the measures, and let's make a special out of that. And we'll make that really exciting, right? And so he sat down and he went about doing it. We've had something like 20 to 30 specials since Joe's been in charge. We think that they really do make a difference to the people in our community. Joe also has I think a really deep foundation in truth. It's hard in this election year to remember what that's about, right? I mean, but truth does matter. That's what we're about as journalists. There is something Aristotelian about it, right? I mean, it's not situational. There are things that are either right or they're wrong. This is either true or it's not. Joe Riddle believes in that, and he forces it into the newsroom and into his copy and into what he does every day. Joe also is a man who, although has a foundation of truth, also has a foundation in faith. Faith is something we don't talk about much in American journalism anymore, but there still are people in newsrooms, believe it or not, and Joe is one of the best of them, who believes that there's something that drives us that's a higher power, that there's something else that is meaningful besides just the day-to-day work. And I am very fortunate in that Joe knows that I'm a fan of Scripture, and he would come in my office, and still does, with some piece of Scripture that he's picked up along the way. It's usually so esoteric I'm not in touch with it, but I do my best. So it's from Ephesians or Ecclesiastes or his favorite Mark and Luke. But I have found that the older we've gotten together, that he spends more time on Revelation than he does on anything else. And he needs to have faith, because we all know, since we all have lived in newsrooms most of our lives, newsrooms can be very cynical places. You know, there are a lot of doubting Thomases in newsrooms. You remember the story of Thomas, of course. He was an apostle, and unfortunately got dubbed with being the doubting Thomas. But you need apostles in newsrooms, people who believe in truth, golden mean, and that we all, at the end, are good people trying to make the people that we serve better. And that is who Joe Riddle is, and I'm so proud to introduce him to you today.
Well, I need a cigarette. Steve, can I get a transcript of that? I need to hit you up for a raise tomorrow. Okay. What an honor it is to be amongst the 5 inductees. Margaret, thank goodness we took a break, to do the raffles. My thanks to the National Academy of Television Arts and Science. It's not every day that you're honored for basically getting old, so I appreciate that. Like the other inductees, I assume, finding out that you were going to be a part of this kind of made you take a look back over your career. And if I had to give a title to mine, it would probably be a series of happy accidents. I grew up in San Diego. It was always my goal to live and work here, but my broadcasting career actually began in radio. And so I went to some pretty exotic locales like Yuma, Arizona, Indio, Bakersfield, all great places. But the goal throughout that time was to get back here to San Diego. In the late 80s, I was a program director at a radio station in Bakersfield, and one of my coworkers actually dared me to try out for a weather position at KERO TV up there. And so I went in for the audition, and we were supposed to do it right after the 6 o'clock news. But anybody who's been in this business any time at all knows that for the production crew, 7 o'clock is lunchtime, and they disappeared faster than a pizza in the newsroom. I kind of heard an echo as they were running out the door. Come back after the 11. So with all that time on my hands before the 11, there was nothing to do but go out, for dinner and drinks. And for me, the emphasis seemed to be on the drinks that night. So by the time I got back there for the audition, I was feeling no pain. A couple days later, the news director calls me up and says, "Joe, you were so relaxed during that audition. Would you like to come work for us?" So that was my start in television. And I'll call that happy accident number 1. And that brings me to my first thank you, and that is to that news director, Walt Brown. He saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. When the producer, they had one producer at that station, when she went on vacation, he insisted that I be the producer for the week she was gone. Hated it. It was terrible. Did not like it at all. But by the next time she went on vacation and I had to fill in, I was in love with it. Somehow or other, producing just caught on to me. And about a year later, we got nominated for a number of Golden Mike Awards. At the ceremony there, oh, by the way, that was happy accident number 2, ending up a producer. At the ceremony there, I met up with a guy named Jeff Godless, who was at Channel 10, KGTV at the time. And we both hit it off because we both loved San Diego, we both loved the Chargers, and we had a great time. And we both won some awards there that night. So a couple weeks later, Paul Sands was the news director at KGTV. He calls me up, and the next thing I know, I'm headed back to San Diego at Channel 10. It was happy accident number 3. That was 1990, and at the time, Channel 10 was the dominant news operation here in San Diego. Jeff was the executive producer, and he quickly became my mentor and is still one of my best friends in the world. He's here with us this morning, Jeffy. His passion, creativity, and insistence on pushing the envelope, stepping out of bounds, were a big part, I think, of KGTV's success at the time. And I was also lucky enough to work with people like Margaret Radford and Kimberly Hunt and Stephen Clark and Michael Tuck. It was during my stint there that happy accident number 4 happened, and that was when I met my incredible and beautiful wife, Debbie. Now, in '94, Jeff left to go to Austin, and Paul Sands left to go head up the news operations for the Pulitzer chain. And to my surprise, a couple weeks later, Paul called and said, "Hey, want to come be the assistant news director in Des Moines, Iowa?" I had to go look. I knew it was in the heartland. I didn't know where. But I guess Debbie and I were in the mood for adventure, so we packed up and went. But after 2 years of some of the worst winters on record for that state, we'd had enough. And the next thing I know, Las Vegas is calling and saying, "You want to come work in Las Vegas?" It took me about a second to say yes to that. Debbie likes to tell her friends that I tried to freeze her in Iowa, and when that didn't work, I tried to cook her in Las Vegas. So I appreciate that. But that brings me to happy accident number 5. In 1998, Greg Rodden was the news director at KUSI. He called and asked if I was ready to come back to San Diego. That, of course, didn't take too long to come up with an answer for either. Now, that was 18 years ago, and I'm as surprised as anyone that I'm still at KUSI. The truth is, though, I love it because I think we're kind of like the little engine that could. We may not have the staff or the toys that a lot of the other stations have, but we're still competitive, and when it comes to local or breaking news, we're the one that they often turn to. And I get to work with people like Lisa Berger, our assistant news director, my friend and birthday boy today, Mark Mathis. The legendary, of course, John Coleman, Paul Rudy, who's the most creative man I have ever had the pleasure of working for, and as a producer drives me crazy constantly. And Steve Cohen, who is one of the smartest men I've ever known. And I'm not just saying that because you let me keep working there. I appreciate it. But that brings me to my final 2 thank yous. Those of you who are in the business know how hard it is to find someone who will stick with you. We work holidays. Margaret referred to this, the long hours, often at night. And when disaster strikes like firestorms, terrorist attacks, blizzards, tornadoes, instead of being by their side to head down to the storm cellar or to evacuate in front of the flames, we're at work. So what do you say to someone who sticks with you through all that? Words fail me, honey, but thank you, and I know I'm the luckiest man in the world. So as you can see, and Steve referred to this, much of my career has been a series of happy accidents, except that I don't believe in coincidence, and I don't believe in happy accidents. I believe in God, and I am in awe at what He's done in my life. Thank you all.
And here's your pen. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. And great storytelling, too, I might add.